Welcome. Good afternoon. Today is January the 11th, 2023, and this is Just Thinking with Patriot News Network. I apologize for missing this morning, was having some internet issues. So unfortunately, I did not get the morning show in. Today, I want to talk to you about the FDIC. I'm not sure if you have seen the video that's circulating around. It is very concerning to say the least. And I've been talking about this for a very long time. Well, I'd say a long time. I've been talking about this for a couple of months about money, about the financial collapse of not just the dollar, but all currency around the globe, right? They want a way to usher in a one world currency. Obviously, we talk about the one world government and so forth, but they need a way to usher in this global currency that will have a standard value. And the only way that they can do that is to have a financial collapse of the current existing system. So we're going to watch a video here. I'm going to stop and break it down in between, but it's just, right now you need to understand the danger that you're in with your money. You need to understand what the smartest things to do with your money is at this point. And it's not, in my opinion, at all the crypto or any of that stuff. I know that's being pushed a lot out here, but, obviously with this Sam Bankman-Fried or whatever his name is, SBF, Bankman-Fried. That was, to me, that was just a setup to get in there and be able to start regulating the crypto, or just kind of dismantle it, is what I think they're going to do with that. So I'm going to bring this clip up here. We're going to watch it. It's very disturbing to see what the banking industry is saying right now about my money and your money that's in there. All right, here we go.
Watch out. The money in your bank is at risk. New intel shows us why. Now, with the Federal Reserve's commitment to crushing demand in the economy, of course, to lower inflation, it's putting massive strain on all financial markets, assets, and institutions. We've seen insurance companies, investments banks, pensions, and even your bank has been caught trying to earn some yield, some return in a zero interest rate world, forcing them to get more creative and more risky with their investments. And it's been fine until it's not. Now, the Federal Reserve's resolve and commitment to fighting inflation has seen them raise rates higher and faster than any other time in history. And now, all these creative and financial bets are turning into dangerous problems and could collapse the entire system like a house of cards, or more like a stack of dominoes. Your asset prices are coming down, and many of you are staying in cash until you're ready to get back into the markets. But what about your cash in the bank? Now, it's protected by the FDIC or whatever regulatory insurance body you have in your country, right? Well, maybe not. In fact, a video of a closed-door meeting of the FDIC just surfaced, and you won't believe what they said. And you need to know. So in this video, I'm going to break down the highlights of what they said, what they mean, the dangers of the cash in your bank account, whether you're in the United States, Europe, Australia, or Canada, what the rules and restrictions are for them, either taking your money or paying you back, and of course, how you should protect yourself in case the worst happens. So let's go. All right, welcome back. If you're new to the channel,
this guy here is Mark Moss. He's got a great channel on YouTube, a lot of very valuable information that I get a lot from him. Very smart guy, sees a lot of stuff coming, a lot of writing on the wall. So I just wanted to make sure to give him credit there. So let's go back to this. This is very interesting, guys. This is something that we all need to be deeply concerned about. This isn't for fear. This is for knowledge, to know what we're facing and what's coming down the pipeline.
My name is Mark, and I'm here to change the way you think about money. Almost everything you've heard, you've learned, and you see is wrong. It's hard to see the right data. And of course, the Federal Reserve right now is trying to crush your retirement account, crush your savings, crush your home, all your assets. So maybe a lot of you are hiding in cash. I've been parking a lot of cash. I haven't been deploying a lot through 2022. But what if that cash is at risk? Now, a lot of you think it is at risk. I've been kind of trying to calm some of those fears, but new information shows that it might be at risk. So what am I talking about? Is your cash, is your money at risk? Now, there was an FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance, right? They're supposed to insure your deposit, your money in the bank. The FDIC had a meeting in November of last year, and we've got some video of that meeting, and we can listen to exactly what they say. Now, I'm a big fan of going back to the source. If you want to know about the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, then go read Klaus Schwab's book called The Great Reset, right? I want to go to the source. I want to get the information directly from the person, and let's get the information directly from the FDIC. Now, they said a lot of things that, like, we should warn the public, but we don't want to cause a bank run. They said that we could fire off a bunch of unintended consequences. Rather than me tell you what they said, let's hear it directly from them. I got a couple clips to play. So let's go ahead and play this first clip here where they talk about your money could be taken in a bail-in. Let's play that clip.
And it's really important. I mean, it's a little bit conflicted, right? I mean, it's important that people understand they can be bailed in, but you don't want a huge run on the institution. But they have, I mean, they're going to be.
Okay.
So let's look at that real quick, and let's see exactly what he means by a bail-in, right? So here I pulled up the definition of a bail-in so that you can see it. It's relief to a financial institution on the brink of failure by requiring the cancellation of debts owed to creditors and depositors. You need to make sure that you understand what that means, right? So this bail-in provides relief to a financial institution that's on the brink of failure, right? So they've made bad investment decisions. With the inflation rate going through the roof, it's really caused a lot of stock markets to tumble. So a lot of these banks the stuff that they have invested in has lost money, right? So they're on the brink of failure. Now, this is going to cancel the debts that they owe to other creditors, right? Which is going to probably cause many other businesses that would go belly up. But also, the most important part is depositors. So a bail-in is the opposite of a bailout, which involves the rescue of the financial institution by, like the government giving taxpayer money to them, like they did in 2008, right? So the bailouts help to prevent creditors from taking on losses, while bail-ins are going to mandate that the creditors take losses, right? So this is the collapse. This is the collapse that I'm talking about that's coming with the financial institutions, right? And what they mean by depositors is you deposit your money into the bank. So in a bail-in, you would not be able to get that money back. So I am going to make some suggestions. I'm obviously not a financial advisor, all that riffraff that you have to say legally. I don't give financial advice. But before the collapse of the dollar, your money can be well spent on other things that will have tangible items that you will need when things start to get really tough. So instead of that money sitting in the bank waiting on a bail-in, you may want to consider taking that out. So let's jump back to Mark here on this video.
Okay, so they're going to be, that's what he said, they're going to be. The people should know that they could be bailed in. So what does that mean? Well, you remember in 2008, the great financial crash, the banks crashed the market. They tried to blame it on greedy homeowners. It was the banks, they crashed the market, and the banks had to be bailed out. Taxpayer money was given, our money, you and I, our taxpayer money was given to the banks to bail them out. A bail-in is the opposite. No bailout, no help coming from the outside. Instead, they take the assets of the people in the bank, the unsecured creditors, you and I. Now, something you may not know is that the money in your bank is not your money. When you fill out all those documents.
But wait. It is our money, right? And it's FDIC insured, right? Surely they can't just take our money, can they?
Documents, that whole packet of documents with the bank, Legally, you've given the money to the bank. It's not yours anymore. You are now an unsecured creditor. Now, if you know anything about debt and credit and bankruptcy, you know that an unsecured creditor is not a good place to be. No one ever gives you a loan unsecured. You have to secure it personally. But you're an unsecured creditor with the bank. So what he's saying is that the public should know. They should know that they could be bailed in. However, we don't want to scare them because then they might go pull their money out of the bank. We don't want that to happen. But he said they will be. So anyway, that's pretty scary. Let's hear this next clip right here.
And I want to say something right there about him saying they will be. That is a statement of what the future holds. So I hope you're picking up on the terminology that when it's used, you have to listen because these folks are great deceivers. They're great at playing with words. And he said they will be. That is a statement for the future, right? So make sure you're picking up on these things that they're saying.
The quiet part out loud. Let's go ahead and play this clip.
When people need to know, but I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
Okay, so this is another person at the FDIC meeting saying that, well, the people should know, they deserve to know, but outside of professionals, they probably don't need to know. So
basically what they're saying there is that outside of the professionals, right? So they may let some people know that are big timers that have their money in the bank, but just the average Joe, you and I, well, you don't really need to know that they're going to take all of your money, right? They already have, because when you put it in the bank, it's no longer your money. You're a unsecured creditor, like he's saying. And most 99.9% of the people in the world don't even know or understand this. So it's very important to understand where you're at with this and where your risk is. And it's very risky at this point.
Oh, your money in the bank, probably going to be taken in a bail-in. That's what they said. But you don't need to know. Now, I beg to differ, which is, of course, why I'm making these videos. I want to make sure you know. Now, if that's not good enough, let's keep going and see what else they have to say. So he finished saying that people deserve to know, but they probably don't need to know. And let's hear what they have to say after that.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank?
I mean, just the irony and the gall of these people is what blows me away. I totally agree with you. They shouldn't know, because they would have to question, why would they be talking about taking my money? Are you kidding me? Like, because it's our money. It was ours that we performed labor for, that we got paid for, that we need to pay our bills. And these people are sitting here saying that you don't deserve to know. This is insane, right?
Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim, right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do.
Okay, so
did you hear that? Like, he's saying, oh, they have more faith in the banking industry than the people in this room. Those are the people that are in charge of the FDIC, sitting there telling you they don't have confidence in the bank.
He completely agrees. The people should know, but we don't want to tell them because it could cause unintended consequences, like everyone going to get their money out. They don't need to know what risk they have. That's what he said. The best part was the end. Again, this is the FDIC meeting, the ones that are insuring your money. And he says, what's funny, or he said, I guess the reality is that the public seems to trust the banking sector more than we do. The people insuring your money. So that's what they think about that. I got one more clip here that I want to play for you. Let's go ahead and roll that clip.
So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people who charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
Okay, so again, We need to control this information. We don't want to get into the public. Now, some people are going to find out about it. The professional institutional managers that have an army of attorneys, they're going to find this out. But we need to be very careful about the public getting this information. So they're even talking about running campaigns to control what they call misinformation, like this video. But you know, the professional money manager with an army of attorneys can find this out, but we don't want you, the public, to know this. But don't worry, I got your back. That's what I'm.
You know, the thing that is really just blowing me away at this point is we're allowing to continue to allow these institutions, the banks, the government, and all this just flat out lie to us, flat out keep us in the dark, flat out rob us blind. And we continue day by day to sit back and just let this happen. And I can tell you, if you study history at all, there's never been a time in history, not one single time, that the government has ever taken away a right temporarily for the betterment of humanity in a situation, and then turned around 6 months, a year, 2 years later and said, okay, here's that right back, right? So this is extremely alarming that they do not want you to tell. They don't want us to find out. So I encourage you to share this video, share it with your family members, share it with your friends, share it on Facebook, share it on different avenues, and get it out there. And this is very important because once the bail-in happens, the money is gone. There is no, you're not going to get it back. It's gone. It literally will be gone. So make sure that you share this with everybody. Make sure that they understand what's coming, what's happening. This is really, really, really important that people understand this is on the verge of happening.
What I'm here for. I'm going to break this down for you. So you probably have more faith in the banking system than the FDIC that's insuring your money has. Now, what I say often, I say they're saying the quiet part out loud. And it really scares me when they start to tell you this stuff up front. It's one thing when they hide it and they lie about it, but we see it anyway, but at least they're hiding it, lying about it, which means they're kind of ashamed about it, right? But when they come out and just admit it to you, that's when it's time to actually get scared. So you are going to be bailed in. That's what he said. They are going to be bailed in, all right? But who will tell them? No one should tell them. We need to keep it away from them, keep this information away. The public doesn't need to know. You don't need to know the risk that your money's at. And who's going to explain it to them? That's me. I got your back. Don't worry. All right. Now, this was taken, if you want, you can just Google this right here, FDIC Systematic Resolution Advisory Committee. You can just Google it. You'll find it on the FDIC website. You can watch the whole video if you want. It's really boring. You probably don't want to. You need a team to give you this information. All right. Now, let's talk about FDIC insurance for a little bit, and let's look at the risk that you really have and how you protect yourself. All right. So FDIC was created to insure deposits in 1933. Now, why 1933? Well, you might remember, I talk about all the time.
33? Nah, just kidding.
Executive Order 6102. That's when the United States government bailed in the banks. They stole your money. So for all of history, 5,000 years, gold was money. We put the gold in the bank. The bank gave us back a paper gold certificate, an IOU, $1. And anytime we want, we can go redeem that dollar for gold. But in 1933, Executive Order 6102, they seized all the gold and they made it illegal for you to own gold. And all you were left with was a piece of paper that was worth nothing and it wasn't redeemable for gold.
And this is something, again, that they bank on the fact that we forget about history, that we don't pay attention to the history books. And of course, that's why they're getting rid of history books and making sure everything's digital, because they can change it, delete it, get rid of it at any time they want. And, you know, people, for those of you that are skeptic and you sit, oh, they're not going to do that. Why do you think they would do it in 1933 and not do it now? Why do you think that they would be willing to seize the gold, right? They seized all the gold because what was happening is the country was going broke. They made a lot of bad decisions. And during that time, we were holding gold for other countries, and other countries realized that Well, we were printing way more money than we probably really had as far as the United States goes. And so they became suspicious about that. And then these other countries started calling saying, hey, we want our gold back, ship it back. Right. So that is why that happened. And now we're in another phase once again, where the country is 30 trillion, 31 trillion with this new spending bill. It'll be 32 trillion. And probably by the end of this year, if we make it, it will be 33 or 34 trillion dollars in debt. And with the inflation, with the drops in the market, that will create less spending, less production as far as the economy goes. Then you will see the inflation, that $1 trillion that new bill that Biden administration pushed through will probably turn into a $2.5 to $3.5 trillion debt to our national debt. So we basically printed all this money. We don't have a way to pay it back, right? We're financially, this country is broke. When you look at the world debt clock, you will see that the entire the entire world is approaching $90 trillion in debt. And who do we owe? Well, we owe the central banking system, which is owned by the Rockefellers. So what the problem is there is when they recall their debt, right? When they say, hey, you got to pay up. It's, we need the money, right? Then they get everything we have of value. We go broke. Right. And this is the financial reset, because the central banking system will control the one world currency. Right. So this was all by design. This has been in play for a very long time. That's why you've always heard that the central bank, the Rockefellers, they funded both sides of every war. Right. Because they never lose that way. Both countries owe them. Right. And one of them will be able to pay back very quickly because they won the war, and the other one will struggle to pay them back for decades and decades. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was the UK maybe, that just finished paying off a debt to us that was from, I want to say the 50s, I think. So it took them 70 years to pay us back. And that is what's happened with the central banking system, is they have funded all of these countries to have wars. And now every country is indebted to them. And the only reason that, a piece of paper is worth what they say it is very simple, because they say it is. And I want you to think about that statement for a minute. If you have negative $100 in your bank, right, and you go to write a check for $1, will it go through? The answer is no, because you're $100 in debt. So you have to ask yourself, how are we functioning as a country when we're trillions of dollars in debt and we continue to print money? It just is very simple. It just doesn't make sense, right? And yes, in 73, and you're correct about the gold. When we cut ties from the gold, we went to the petrodollar, and that is backed by oil. And the reason that was so important is because we basically made it to where everybody in the world had to use the dollar, because we were moving the most oil around and so forth. So what's happened with that now is you have other countries that are trading, right? So you have India bought oil from Russia with ruble. That's the first time since the Cold War that oil has been purchased without the American dollar. There's a lot of signs pointing to the financial collapse. So we'll get back to this video real quick. And of course,
this trick to get gas for a penny is going to get banned in Canada. This ex-programmer got fired from his job at a...
So they seized everybody's money, their gold, took it, made it illegal for you to own it. Then they instantly devalued it. And then they turned around and put insurance on top of it. So it starts from a very shady place of the government already doing this, stealing your money. Now, FDIC insurance, they've changed it over the period, since 1933. Currently, it insures accounts up to $250,000. So a lot of people think they're safe with that. Well, maybe you're not so safe with that. So a couple things that you need to keep in mind. First of all, directly from the FDIC website, we find the coverage limits. So it's $250,000 per depositor. So a lot of times people think, well, I'll put, $200,000 in this account, I'll put $200,000 in that account. But it's not per account, it's per depositor. Okay, that's a big difference. Per depositor.
That is a huge difference. That is something I did not know until today by watching this video. So again, that's why I think this is extremely important that you get this information, share this video, get it out there, because this is stuff a lot of people do not realize. And if you got, people have $1 million in the bank and they put 250 and 250 and 250 in these different accounts, and they're going to save that, it's their retirement or whatever the case may be. They're only insured for that $250,000, but wait, there's more.
So FDIC provides separate coverage for deposits held in different account ownership. So not separate accounts per depositor. So if you have two $200,000 accounts, you're not insured per ownership categories. It may qualify for coverage over $250 if they have funds in different ownership categories. This is the key piece. Depositor, different depositors, different ownership. All deposits that our account holder has in the same ownership category at the same bank are all added together and insured up to the standard insurance amount. So again, you have two accounts, $200,000 each. They put that together right off the bat, you're over, okay? Now, what about the even ability to pay this back? So the FDIC insurance company is supposed to have money to pay back, but do they have the money? So we see that they insure over $9 trillion in bank deposits, but they only have $125 billion in assets. So if the banks were to collapse and they were to lose trillions of dollars, how do they pay that back? They only have $125 billion in assets. That's a big problem. So who gets the money? Well, I know what a lot of you are already thinking. You're thinking, well, Mark, the government would bail them out, right? The Fed will just create money, print it, and just give it to them, right? Of course. Well, maybe not. Let's take a look at that. So if you remember, I already referenced in 2008, the great financial crash, the banking collapse, the taxpayers had to bail out the banks. And after that, they passed all types of banking reform, one of which was called, Dodd-Frank. And Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Act was passed January 21st of 2010. And it was a sweeping overhaul of the financial markets. And it was to strengthen the financial markets in case of another 2008 financial crisis, like where the banks become insolvent and can't pay their depositors. And again, if people want to pull their money out of the banks collapse, which is why they don't want to tell you this. Now, the law also provides for an expedient liquidation process for any insolvent financial institution. So any institution that becomes insolvent, there's a process. What is that process? Well, we find out the process referred to as, quote, statutory bail-ins. Statutory bail-ins includes expanded powers to the Federal Reserve, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, so the Fed, the SEC, and also FDIC. And
now, let me just ask you a question. This was all overhauled in 2008, right? So this was the banks that were loaning out all this money and for housing, and we knew if anybody was paying attention to what was going on, they were giving people loans that had no business getting a loan to get a home. They were allowing people to do these arms, a 5-year arm where they could get into a house, have this low monthly payment. Let's say it was a $2,500 mortgage, but for the first 5 years, they only paid $1,400 for the mortgage. And the pitch to people was, okay, but when in 2 or 3 or 4 years, when your credit's better and all this stuff, you just refinance and boom, you'll get this, better rate and you'll have a much lower payment, just like you did the first 5 years. Obviously, that happened to virtually nobody, and many foreclosures obviously happened. So to me, it's very interesting that the Federal Reserve, right, which again is not part of the federal government, right? This is the Rockefellers, right? So it's amazing to me that they were able to have the major influence on how this was written into the new overhaul of the financial system. It's kind of like it was on purpose. Like maybe they knew 14 years later that they were going to put in the Great Reset, that they were going to collapse the financial system, that they were going to break the bank, so to speak. And I mean, think about it. If they do this bail-in, which the guy said, and they will, right? When they do this bail-in, the bank is going to seize all your money, right? So is JP Chase Morgan or Wells Fargo or Capital One? Are any of those going to be hurting? I mean, they're going to take all your money. Who's going to be the one hurting? It's going to be us, right? It's going to be us.
It says here, companies can be placed in receivership under federal control with the FDIC. So what does that mean? Do you know what receivership is? Look it up. If you've been through bankruptcy or know someone who has been through bankruptcy, or if you have money at, Celsius or BlockFi or FTX, any of these companies going through bankruptcy right now, you're probably finding out the hard way. You gave your money to BlockFi or Celsius or FTX. You were an unsecured creditor. Now they're filing for bankruptcy. There's a receiver that's going through all the assets to figure out what's left to give to who and who gets money first. Well, secured creditors get the money first. Unsecured creditors get the money last. And the receiver is who decides that. So the Fed, the SEC, and the FDIC will put the company into receivership under federal control. So the receiver is then going to go, okay, well, the asset's in receivership. I have to decide how we divvy up this money. And, there's not enough for everybody. So who gets it first? And you're an unsecured creditor. So that's how this works. Now, we keep going on. If you understand Dodd-Frank a little bit, remember what it was for. It was for no more bailouts. All right. So the most affirming stance this new law makes is that, quote, too big to fail. Remember that term? Too big to fail financial institutions will not be bailed out by taxpayer dollars. That was the whole point. Taxpayers were pissed. We can't just bail out these banks, private profits, but we socialize the losses. Forget that, right? And so we're not going to bail them out anymore.
But it's almost like at the same time, while we got really upset about these bailouts, that they use that to twist this so that it have to be a bail-in. How do we win? How does that a win, right? How's that a win? So in 2008, we bailed them out with our taxpayer money. Did we feel it? No, they just chalked it up on the national debt clock, right? They just put it on the old debt clock. But if we have a bail-in and they take our money, that's going to affect everyone, right? Or at least anyone with money in the bank.
So protecting taxpayer money, you and I, from becoming the principal priority of the new U.S. reform. So the whole point of the reform is no more bailouts for the banks. But what about the depositors? Well, the depositors are backed by FDIC, but FDIC doesn't have enough money. But no worries, right, Mark? Because the government's going to bail them out. Well, the whole point of Dodd-Frank was that there were no more bailouts. So is there going to be a bailout coming for you? Well, we'll have to see how that goes. I understand, and let me know. Light up the comments already right now, right? People would riot. There would be protests. The government would be forced to do something, right? I mean, they're going to go against Dodd-Frank and they're going to bail them out. Maybe. They go into receivership. How long does bankruptcy take? How long is your Celsius or your BlockFi or your FTX case going, right? It goes on for years. You may not have access to that money for a long time while they're working this out. If they decide they want to change a law, how long does it take to change a law? Do you want to deal with all of that? Let's keep going. Now, this is also in Europe, so it doesn't matter where you're at in the world. Australia, Canada, Europe all have basically the same type of regulations. In 2013, the EU introduced resolutions to make the bail-in a common principle. All right. We saw this. It happened in Cyprus. They were very happy with the way it worked in Cyprus. I believe accounts over $100,000 got 47%, about half their money was gone. The same way Dodd-Frank did in the United States. So just like we have Dodd-Frank in the United States, EU has something very similar to that. All right. So now this sounds pretty scary, right? How do you protect yourself from this? Well, let's go back. So what we do is we try to go back and look at that past situation back to 1933 when they seized the money the first time. How would you have protected yourself from that? They took the gold, they took it from you, and then they gave you worthless paper, and then they devalued it. Well, if I didn't have any gold in the bank, if I had like a bunch of land and 100,000 head of cattle, something like that, I wasn't affected. I still had my land, I still had my cattle, right? I wasn't affected because my gold wasn't in the bank. So First of all, if you don't have money in the bank, if you're broke, you probably don't have to worry about it. All right.
So the other thing that he's talking about here is what I mentioned earlier, which is your tangible assets are going to be more important when this bail-in happens, right? So again, what he's saying about them getting about 47% of their money back, the same thing happened in 73 when we went to the Petro, when they seized everybody lost about 40% of their money. So again, I'm not saying that everybody would lose everything. I'm not saying it would be a total swipe because I don't know, right? I don't really know how that would work. But what I am saying is, if you did get money back, how long would it take? Like Mark was just saying in the video, how long does it take before the receiver decides who gets money? And again, we're the uninsured creditors, right? So, and at the end of the day, if the bank fails, right, and they collapse, then they just collapse, right? There's nothing that says that we have to have a bank, and is it going to be every single one? I mean, it appears this is a way that they're trying to bring in, like Ann just put on the screen, the central bank digital currency. Everything is interestingly lining up. They got other countries to do the same exact thing, and so it's interesting how it's all just from 2008 when that collapse almost seemed intentional, because if you're a bank, you should be smart enough that when you're loaning out money, that you don't loan it out like they were in 2007, 6, 7, and 8, right? So to me, when I just would hear about these loans that were given out with zero financial background, I was like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. You're going to give somebody a loan for a home it's way more than they can afford. Why would you do that? That's like setting them up for failure right out of the gate. But yet they continue to do it over and over and over, and nobody stopped them. Then when they bailed them out with the taxpayer dollars, then of course all the taxpayers became angry. That's bullcrap. You can't do that. You can't use our money. So they said, oh, okay. Well, then we'll just put a bail-in policy from now moving forward. The banks will have to bail in if they fail. That kind of seems like it went by design. And then all the unsecured creditors will lose their money. So the rich people with the army of lawyers, those people will get their money back. The common person, we're not going to get our money back when this happens, right? So if it's still in the bank, you're probably not going to get it back. And if you do, it'll be substantially less. And if you do, it'll be substantially later.
But otherwise, if you do have money, what should you do? Well, a couple things. One, diversify across financial institutions. Some financial institutions are more risky than others. In 2008, some went out of business, some didn't. So diversify across financial institutions. You also want to check the bank's stability. Some banks are more risky. How do I know which banks are more risky? Well, banks with large derivatives and large mortgage books. Those are going to be the ones that are the most exposed. Now, which ones will be less exposed? Well, I like brokerage accounts, so money at Charles Schwab or E-Trade, they don't have mortgage books. They don't do derivatives, right? So they're way less risky, and they still have FDIC insurance if that works. Credit unions, local banks, etc. So they're not doing large derivatives. They're not doing mortgage books, so you can stay away from those types of banks, and you can divide it up. Now, remember, it's per depositor, so you might also need to have different ownership accounts. So think about different corporations, business entities, trusts, things like that. Another thing is that, like I said, I'm holding cash right now. I've been stockpiling quite a bit of cash. Now, what do I do with that cash? Well, we can also put it into like money market accounts. You can make 4%, 4.5% in money market accounts, which goes into like the Fed accounts. So it's protected, it's at the Fed as opposed to being in a bank. You can do CDs where it's locked up in that. You could even start to buy treasuries, which is basically the risk-free asset they call it, right? Government treasuries. So these are different ways that you can do that. And of course, like I said, assets out of the bank, gold, silver, real estate, heads of cattle. I got 6 cows now. I got 10 goats, and Bitcoin, of course, right? All of that is outside of the reach of the government. And so depends on how much cash you have. It's going to depend on how much you need to worry about this. Again, if you're broke, you don't really need to worry about it. But what do you need to worry about if you are broke? Well, you need to understand what happens here. It could lead to civil unrest. And if the government does cave and print that money, then we're going to see 10 trillion, $20 trillion printed like that. And then what happens to prices? Then what happens to asset prices?
Then basically what you're going to see if they were to print that type of money, which would just be foolish. But if they did, it would just put us, even like I said, we're $30 trillion in debt. We'll be 34 by the end of the year. That would just be asinine, right? And then that would raise inflation to probably 20%. And that would cause the cost of goods for everything to double or triple. So again, there's really no good outcome that's coming down this pipeline. So assets are going to be your most important and valuable thing that you possibly can have. Again, I firmly believe we're going to be going through a major food shortage in the next, several months, 3 to 4 months. And the reason is because we've seen all the problems they had with the crops over the last 6 months. So now is the time for those harvests to be hitting the stores. And now, of course, they're not, because the floods, the droughts, all the different things, the food plants and all that stuff. So with that being said, again, assets are going to be what your money is worth, right? Not the paper stuff that we hold.
Think about that. You got to plan ahead. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. If you'd like more on this, let me know in a comment down below. Of course, as always, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. If you don't, you can give me a thumbs down. That's okay. But at least tell me why in the comment. Also, I'm having a special live event. I got Robert Kiyosaki headlining and a bunch of other really cool people that you want to hear talk about this new parallel economy that's just starting. It's a massive opportunity. We're going to do 3 days of content. There's a link down below if you want to check it out. And that's what I got. All right. To your success.
I would strongly recommend that you watch that. Robert Kiyosaki, he's the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he did an amazing job with that. And if you listen to what he's been saying lately, he has also been a big advocate of telling us that the market is going to crash. So I'm not sure what this parallel market is that they're talking about. I will definitely be watching that. In times like this, there's always going to be people that make money and there's going to be people that go broke. But I think this is going to be one of the worst financial crashes that we've ever seen, because again, I believe that you have to remember the guy that we watched, Mark Moss, he's still kind of like in the financial world about investing and all that stuff. So he's still going to keep a positive spin on to that nature. And I've watched him for a while, and for a while he's been saying, oh, they're not going to, your cash is okay. Your cash is okay. And of course now he puts out this video and he's like, maybe not. Right. So again, I would strongly encourage to stay very vigilant. If you don't pull out your money in the bank, I would watch it very, very closely. And, me personally, keep enough in for bills. And then, get, like he said, you got gold, you got silver, you got cows, you got land, you got real estate, you got, but again, if the markets crash, right, everything crashes. What's your land worth? Nothing. But could it be worth something later on down the road? I don't know, somehow if we can pull it out. So again, please share this video with your family, with your friends. Make sure they are aware of what's coming. Again, I would try to warn as many people as you possibly can that you care about, because as that guy said in the video, this is coming. This isn't a what if, it's a when. Y'all have a great day.